Revenge is a dish best served flaming hot and with a side order of drones. That's the philosophy Ukraine followed in late January when it bombarded over 13 Russian regions, including Moscow and Crimea, with drones that left cities in flames. Russian President Vladimir Putin got a taste of his own medicine. For the entire Ukraine war, he's been using these types of attacks to devastate his enemy. Now the war has firmly come home to roost in Moscow, and chaos awaits Russia. So what did Ukraine accomplish with its massive drone swarm attack? How did Russia respond? And why is this attack a perfect demonstration of karma coming back to hit Moscow hard? On January 24th, Ukraine sent well over 100 drones into the skies over Russia. Those drones were on a mission: cause as much damage as possible in and around Moscow. Ukraine's drone operators split their massive swarm over 11 Russian regions in what stands today as one of Ukraine's most significant attacks on Russian territory since Putin started his special military operation. Included in the regions targeted were Ryazan, where one of Russia's most important oil refineries is in operation, Bryansk, Engels, and even Moscow itself. And there are already clear reasons why Ukraine launched this drone attack. As Politico reports, this massive strike is just the latest in a series that demonstrates Ukraine's increasing ability to hit targets inside Russia. Ukraine is using these strikes to devastate Putin's ability to keep his war machine churning. Ammunition stores are being destroyed and oil refinery plants are being shut down, limiting the amount of artillery shells and fuel that can be sent to the front lines. Ukraine Army Chief General Alexander Syrskyi laid it all out. For several months now, the norms of artillery ammunition consumption in the Russian army have been reduced by almost half. If earlier this figure reached 40,000 per day, now it is much less, claims Syrskyi. So cutting off Russian supply lines is an obvious reason for Ukraine's latest and most devastating drone attack on Moscow. But what exactly did it achieve with its 100-plus drones? Reports started filtering in during the hours and days after Ukraine launched its strike, and it was Ryazan where Ukraine achieved some of its best results. According to Reuters, the drone attack managed to hit several oil storage facilities at the Ryazan oil refinery. Those units went up in flames, potentially wasting hundreds of thousands of barrels of petroleum and diesel that Russia could have either sold or sent to its frontline troops. Equipment was also damaged at the refinery, with a railway loading rack getting destroyed, limiting Russia's ability to transport oil around the Ryazan facility, and a hydrotreater being left in tatters. That last piece of equipment is important. Hydrotreaters remove the impurities from refined oil products, making them usable in Russian vehicles, tanks, and airplanes. Russia now has to try and replace that valuable piece of equipment, or else its Ryazan plant will become a lame duck in Putin's efforts to keep his soldiers stocked with fuel. The BBC provided more details. It notes that the Ryazan facility is a massive 2.3 square miles, making it one of the largest oil refineries in Russia. Footage of the attack, which has been verified by the BBC, shows people fleeing from the refinery on foot and in cars as a massive fireball rises into the sky. It's believed Ukraine struck the Ryazan facility in two places. One of the fires caused by the drone strike occurred at the northern entrance of the facility, with the BBC confirming this by matching signs and the road layout to images of the plant before it was attacked. The second fire was about 1.6 miles away from the first on the eastern side of the facility, which is likely where the oil storage units were hit. And it gets worse for Putin. The oil refinery wasn't Ukraine's only target in Ryazan. It also managed to hit the nearby Novoryazan thermal power plant. These plants use natural fuels such as oil and gas to generate heat used to turn water into steam. That steam then drives turbines, which produce electricity. It's likely the thermal plant played a key role in keeping the Ryazan oil refinery running, so it going offline means the refinery itself goes offline. The successful strike in Ryazan alone would have been a massive success for Ukraine, but Kyiv was just getting started. Moscow itself was also a key target. The city's mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, says that Ukraine attacked the city directly on the night of January 23rd and into January 24th. Of course, Sobyanin also claims that Russia defended itself perfectly, stating, "The Defense Ministry's air defense forces repelled a drone attack in the Kolomna and Remensky urban districts, both are in the Moscow Oblast, and the drones were flying towards Moscow." Perhaps those drones didn't make it, but they still managed to wreak havoc in Russia's capital, with their presence forcing Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency to suspend operations at the Zhukovsky, Vnukovo, and Domodedovo airports. Authorities gave no specific reasons for the suspensions, with the Federal Air Transport Agency spokesperson simply saying, "To ensure the safety of flights of civil aircraft, temporary restrictions have been imposed on the operation of airports Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, Vnukovo, Zhukovsky, and Kaluga." You may have noticed the agency mentioned 5 airports. Other reports claimed 3. Translated from Russian propaganda speak, that little conflict in detail tells us two things. First, Ukraine's massive drone attack covered more of the Moscow Oblast than Russia would have liked people to believe. And second, those drones likely caused more damage than Moscow claimed, forcing the closure of the airports. And the hits kept on coming in Ukraine's massive drone strike. Bryansk was another of the regions targeted. You may remember this as the border region Ukraine attempted to invade in March 2023, almost as a precursor to the much more organized counter-invasion of Kursk that came in August 2024. The region is clearly still a target for Kyiv. Ukraine's massive overnight drone strike saw it attack the Kremeny L microchip plant in Bryansk, with the TASS news agency reporting the damage. 6 drones struck in Kremeny L on the night of January 24th, damaging part of the production facilities and the finished products warehouse. No casualties were reported in the strike, but it's obvious why Ukraine targeted the plant. A staggering 94% of its production is for the Russian Defense Ministry, with the plant creating key components used in some of Russia's most powerful missile systems. These include the ultra-modern S-500 aerial defense system, the Pantsir air defense units, and Russia's Kalibr cruise missiles. RBC Ukraine also says that the facility produced chips for Russia's Iskander missiles, which are capable of carrying nuclear warheads, along with chips for drones and both radar and electronic warfare systems. Taking out the facility means it can't provide the chips needed to make those systems work. The knock-on effect is that Russia now has fewer missiles with which to attack Ukrainian cities, at least for a short period, and its air defenses are less capable of repelling future Ukrainian aerial assaults in Russia. These were just the 3 headline results of Ukraine's massive January 24th drone strike. However, several other regions were forced to fend off the drone swarm. They weren't always successful. Back in Ryazan, the region's oil refinery and thermal power plant weren't the only targets for Ukraine's drones. RBC Ukraine says the drones managed to cause a series of about 10 explosions in Ryazan's regional center, forcing Russia's air defense systems to work overtime to stop them. It's also possible that Ukraine targeted the Diaghilevo military airbase, which is on the outskirts of Ryazan. It's unknown if that particular attack was successful, though it's likely Ukraine was targeting the T-95 and T-22 aircraft stationed at the base, in addition to the 360th Aircraft Repair Plant stationed nearby. Taking out aircraft and limiting Russia's ability to repair damaged planes would have the knock-on effect of relieving the constant pressure caused by Russia's glide bomb assaults on Ukraine's cities. Drone wreckage in Ryazan even hit a private house, according to the region's governor. Over in Saratov, even more Ukrainian drones were wreaking havoc. Russia's media says that Ukraine tried to hit an oil refinery in the region, with the drone assaults causing up to 7 explosions that were heard in and around the city. It seems this portion of the attack was conducted by Ukraine's Luty and Boba drones, the latter of which is a kamikaze drone that explodes upon impact with its target. The strikes were enough to force the sounding of an air raid alert in Saratov, again sending Russia's air defense units into overdrive. Finally, Russia claims that there were threats of a drone assault on Tatarstan, which is a Russian republic that's about 700 miles away from Ukraine. It doesn't seem like that drone assault was successful, but perhaps it didn't need to be. Ukraine had already hit a massive oil refinery in the region with a drone assault back on January 11th. So what was Russia's response to Ukraine's drone strike? Well, perfect elimination of every drone that attacked. At least that's what Putin's propaganda merchants would like to have you believe. No matter which region reports of attacks came from, the news from Russia was always the same. We shot down the drones and there were no casualties. Russia claims to have destroyed 37 drones in Bryansk and another 20 in Ryazan. It also says 17 drones were shot down in Kursk, another region Ukraine targeted, likely in support of its occupying troops in the oblast, with the same being shot down over Saratov. 7 more drones went down over Moscow, as did 6 in Belgorod, and a total of 7 across Voronezh, Tula, and Oryol. Oh, and just for good measure, Russia also shot down a Ukrainian drone over occupied Crimea, and later said it had destroyed 3 more over Leningrad. That's a total of 115 drones, all of which Russia claims failed to achieve their objectives. The flaming wreckage of an oil refinery in Ryazan, shut down airports near Moscow, and the decimated microchip plant in Bryansk all beg to differ with that assessment. As is so often the case, Russia is trying to deny Ukraine had any impact at all, being coy about damage to material assets while focusing on how its air defenses easily handled the entire swarm. Let's all just ignore the very real impact of this enormous Ukrainian attack, Putin says. But that's impossible. After all, January 24th wasn't the first time that Ukraine showed that it was capable of hitting Russia right in its heart. There were precursors to this enormous assault. On November 26, 2023, Russia claimed that Ukraine had attacked Moscow with a fleet of at least 24 drones. As usual, Russia said it also took out all of these drones with their anti-aircraft systems, with most falling over Tula, Kaluga, and Bryansk. Ukraine made no real comment about that attack, or Russia's claims that debris from one of the destroyed drones hit and wounded one person in an apartment building in Moscow. Perhaps it was just testing Russia's aerial defenses in this smaller strike. Almost a year later, on November 10, 2024, Ukraine launched another swarm of drones in Moscow's direction. This time, the force attacking Moscow included 34 drones, which forced flights to be diverted away from 3 of Moscow's major airports and caused injury to at least 5 people. In addition to those 34 drones, Ukraine attacked Western Russia with a fleet of around 50. Again, Russia claimed to have dealt with the attack. The country's defense ministry even called it an attempt by the Kyiv regime to carry out a terrorist attack. Of course, it said that while conveniently ignoring the fact that Russia had also launched 145 drones in Ukraine's direction on the same night. And that fact gives us a clue for the answer to our next question. Why did Ukraine set Moscow and its surrounding regions ablaze with its huge January 24th drone attack? We can sum up the answer in one word: revenge. Yes, Ukraine rightly points out that each attack on an oil refinery or microchip processing plant damages the Russian war machine. That damage relieves pressure on the front lines by limiting the fuel Russia can send to its troops and preventing Putin from building the weapons with which he batters Ukrainian cities. But batters Ukrainian cities is the key here. Ukraine is targeting Russia in its own territory because Putin has spent the entirety of his special military operation doing the same thing to Ukraine. Karma is coming home to roost for Russia's president. In fact, on the very same day that Ukraine launched its drone blitz, reports were also surfacing that Russia had conducted a drone strike of its own near Kyiv. That attack killed at least 3 people, all civilians, along with damaging a residential apartment building, some commercial buildings, several cars, and 8 houses. These types of assaults on Ukrainian cities have been a hallmark of Putin's approach to the war. While his soldiers die in droves participating in human wave attacks on the ground, Putin sends missiles and drones to pepper the cities he wants to take. There are plenty of examples. We mentioned earlier that Ukraine's November 2024 drone attack on Moscow was a response to Russia sending over 140 drones to attack its territory. In June 2024, Russia attacked both Kyiv and Kharkiv with missiles. Fragments from one of those missiles, which Ukraine destroyed mid-air, fell onto a suburban apartment building in Kyiv, while one of the guided bombs Russia fired at Kharkiv managed to penetrate air defenses and kill a civilian. Just 3 months prior, Russia had targeted Kyiv with another series of assaults. Kharkiv also faces regular attacks to this day, likely because it's a city Putin believes his forces can take. July 2024 also saw a wave of attacks, some again targeting Kyiv, with others hitting regions of Pokrovsk and Kryvyi Rih. Those attacks occurred just as the people were starting their day, according to the United Nations or UN resident coordinator in Ukraine, Denise Brown. She also said that dozens of people have been killed or injured in the strikes, which also caused heavy damage to a children's hospital right in Kyiv center. This is just a tiny example of the hundreds of attacks Putin has aimed towards Ukraine's cities. Kyiv's January 24th drone blitz carried a simple message: we can hit your cities and your capital just as hard as you hit ours. And this isn't the only way that Putin has reaped what he's sown during his special military operation. For most of 2024, Russia has also been targeting Ukraine's power grid. Putin's goal is simple: take out power to Ukraine's cities to leave their residents feeling terrified and, when these attacks take place during winter, freezing cold. Russia launched one of these power grid assaults just 9 days before Ukraine carried out its drone assault on Moscow. The attack included over 40 missiles, around 30 of which Ukraine managed to shoot down, along with 70 strike drones, according to NBC News. Unfortunately, this Russian strike was more successful than many that target Ukraine's power grids. State energy company Ukrenergo announced that they caused power outages in several cities, including Sumy, Kharkiv, Kirovohrad, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky outlined exactly why these facilities were targeted. It's the middle of the winter, and Russia's goal remains unchanged: our energy infrastructure, he said. And he's right. Temperatures in Kyiv can drop as low as 19 degrees Fahrenheit, well below freezing, in January, with Russia's power grid assaults designed to prevent everyday Ukrainians from heating their homes. Russia's power grid attacks are so extensive that the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, believes they are heightening the risk of a nuclear accident. The IAEA's director, General Rafael Mariano Grossi, said, "A nuclear accident can result from a direct attack on a plant, but also from power supply disruption. Perhaps that's Putin's goal. Rather than using Russia's nuclear weapons against Ukraine, as he's threatened so many times during his war, he's attempting to create a Chernobyl situation with his power grid attacks." Remember that Ukraine targeted Russian oil refineries on January 24th. Those attacks gain a new context now. Beyond limiting the flow of petroleum and diesel to troops on the front lines of the war, these attacks also make it harder for Russia to supply its own people with fuel. Again, it's karma for Putin. Attack Ukraine's power grid, and Ukraine will make life harder for Russia's people. Finally, there's perhaps the biggest reason why Ukraine has attacked Moscow with drones: revenge for the sheer scale of civilian casualties Putin's approach to the Ukraine war has caused. According to Statista, the period between February 24, 2022 and December 31, 2024 has seen the UN's Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, or OHCHR, record 12,456 civilian deaths in Ukraine. There were a further 28,382 injuries caused by Russia's constant missile, drone, and glide bomb assaults on Ukrainian cities. To make matters worse, 669 of the dead were children, along with 1,833 of the injured. Russia has even ramped up its attacks on civilians in response to Ukraine's attempts to defend itself. For instance, the UN reports that September 2024 saw 208 Ukrainian civilians killed, along with 1,200 being injured, in Russian attacks that were likely a response to Ukraine's Kursk counter-invasion. Ukraine isn't trying to kill civilians with its revenge attacks, but it's targeting Russian cities and military facilities inside Russia itself because Putin did it all first. He hit Ukraine's cities, he attacked its power grids, he killed thousands of Ukrainian civilians. January 24th was just Ukraine delivering a dose of Putin's own medicine back to him, and there's more to come. Just 5 days after Ukraine's drone swarm devastated Moscow and its surrounding regions, Ukraine launched an attack on an oil refinery in the town of Kostovo. Over 500 miles away from the war's front lines, that refinery was struck by 4 drones that caused significant damage to the facility. Zelensky also says that Ukraine is at the point where it can build 4 million of its own drones per year as of October 2024. That sheer scale of production means that 2025 will likely hold many more long-range attacks into Russian territory in store. Putin is going to have to deal with those drone assaults as Ukraine increasingly brings the war he started to his people's collective doorstep. And why shouldn't Kyiv do that? It's only paying back Putin for what he's spent the entire war doing. But what do you think about Ukraine's massive drone assault on Moscow and the surrounding regions? Does it showcase Ukraine at the peak of its aerial prowess, or was this attack just a precursor of things to come for Russia as Ukraine settles into building more and more drones? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and thank you for watching the video.